Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you happen to be in. The XRP Army News Community Channel is I am very excited to be able to share a conversation with January Walker, who is running for political office in Utah in the United Party. And she's been, I know a lot of people in our community have been seeing recently that she's been on Twitter talking about her beliefs and why she feels like she wants to get elected. So I felt like it would be a great opportunity to be able to get her on and let her share her beliefs and her platform and see what she knows about crypto a little bit and then just kind of see what happens. So, having said that, welcome, January, and thank you very much for coming on to share who you are and your belief system with the XRP community.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I just appreciate that the XRP community is giving me this opportunity to share this information, and more importantly, that they understand what it is that I'm talking about. That means that people put in the time to learn and to be educated. So thank you.
Well, the one thing that I will tell you about our community, I've been in it about 4 years now, and we have been dissected and hated and looked over, and we have, and I can't remember who said it, but somebody did some kind of research and found out that we were the smartest community in crypto. So just so you know that, so you know who you're talking to.
The
you
smartest
got a
one.
really
Excellent.
really smart group of people that you'll be sharing yourself with. Okay, so I guess the very first thing is I know a little bit about you because I did some research before, and I've read a lot of your tweets on Twitter since I saw the first one. And so, would you like to just kind of give a little bit of your background and how you found your way into the desire to run for politics?
Yeah, so my background is in creating products and solutions for the privatized industry. So I essentially create multi-million dollar solutions for multi-million dollar problems, which I think is kind of like a very unique value proposition in terms of politicians, because normally politicians, they just kind of like say things, but they don't understand how to implement it and solve it and work together and collaborate and really drive a team towards a resolution. And so being able to sift through that ambiguity is really what I bring to the table. So in terms of the stuff that I've been doing recently, I work in the cybersecurity sector. So this is specifically within the identity space. So digital identity, document verification, KYC AML, as well as self-sovereign identity, which is, many of you know, decentralized identity or blockchain identity. Um, and then the second question that you asked was, how did I get to the place of politics?
Yes.
Ultimately, what it really boils down to is that nobody was coming to save us. And I think myself, like many others, waited years for somebody to step up to the plate that said that they would hold themselves to a higher standard politically, and that they would lean into the next level and start engaging with their constituency and with other individuals and soliciting feedback from them. And that was something that, over the years I've recognized has never really been there or been available, but we now have the tools to do that. So saying, okay, nobody else is going to do this. We really can't wait any more years. So I suppose I will be the one to step forward.
Well, good. I like that. Show some chutzpah. So, you mentioned blockchain, and I know one of the things that I would love to see um, is a blockchain voter program system, whatever. And do you feel like that that's something that would benefit us? And do you feel like that it would be all that difficult to implement with all the technological advances that we've got now? And what do you feel like would be the hesitation of the powers that be not to do that?
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about blockchain voting. A lot of that has been driven by the election that we experienced in 2020, regardless of however you feel about it, whatever it is that you believe. Ultimately, what it comes down to is that the conversation was 100% preventable. And we can do that through blockchain and say, where are the votes being tallied up, right? How many votes did this person actually receive? And was it coming from a real person? So like when we look at the problems that we experience today, frequently you'll have spouses casting ballots for their spouses, right? So you don't actually know that individual is the one that cast the ballot. And then in addition to that, the accessibility problem has been a decades old issue where, hold on just a second. For some reason, my computer came unplugged. Sorry, so it's a decades old issue that could be solved, especially when we look at the military or people that are abroad or in different states that may not 100% be able to get to the ballots, right? So this expands voter access, says it's secure, and it also has some cool functionality where you can see it in real time, and you can say, oh, yeah, this person got these votes, and we know they came from a safe place. In terms of how long it would take to implement, I think at this point, we just need to put in the legislation that creates a framework of trust around it. So anything that we talk about in terms of Web3 is creating a framework of trust, and that's exactly what we need to do here, because there are companies already doing this. And in Utah, in the 2020 elections, it was actually Amelia Powers Gardner that pushed forward the blockchain election that we had out here in Utah County. So the technology worked. It's going to continue to advance and become even better and more solidified. And I think that we should start leaning into that, especially now that we're in 2020. It's a cool thing. So.
Okay, and also the since you come from a cybersecurity and technical background, how difficult do you believe that the implementation of a blockchain voter system would be?
I actually think it would probably be easier than people would expect. Just because we do have so many companies that are so far along, so advanced that it's already available in terms of like they're doing proof of concepts, proof of values right now. So in terms of implementing it, what it would actually require, if these companies set it up in the right way, right? They've gone through, they've funded it, everything's done and completed. They would just put in who the candidates are, right? Who the candidates are, what the office is, and then from there you would just select it. So it is here, right? And then from the user side, you would just go through, you'd log into your phone through, my preference is that you would validate through that vote through a self-sovereign identity wallet. And I know that this is really new technology that I'm proposing, but you would do that. But I guess in terms of timelines, it's already here. We could definitely have it by the 2024 election, definitely by 2026, definitely by 2028. Like there's no reason to hold us back from the future, especially as some of these other societies start to lap us.
Yeah, I'm a libertarian, so I'm kind of in the middle. So not, there's some things on the left and some things on the right that I don't like, but I do lean more to the right, just to be totally transparent. And I really can't see how not implementing blockchain voting makes more sense than what we've got right now, because I don't know. I watched 2,000 Mules and I felt like there was a lot of valid points in it. I don't know if you watched that documentary or not, but it was pretty convincing. And I just feel like that we've got a problem. And my stepmother passed away recently, but my father and my stepmother are probably the two liberalist people on the planet besides AOC and her boyfriend.
I didn't even know she was dating anyone.
Yeah.
And I'm really sorry about your stepmother.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, yeah, they were showing pictures of her eating in Florida outside with no mask. And they made a big stink about the hypocrisy that she was saying everybody ought to mask up. But
I mean, she's eating.
She was at some diner, cafe outside and no masks. And it's the kind of, the mask for thee, but not for me kind of mentality that kind of irks some people, including me. But anyway, my parents didn't like the idea because they felt like that there were going to be some people in the poverty areas that were not going to be able to get signed up to get a voter ID. But
Yeah.
for the for the integrity of our elections, January, I just think it's something that is an effort that needs to be made. If someone can get them a ballot and get it filled out for them and put it in a drop box, they can certainly get to like a driver's license place to get signed up for a voter ID. Seems reasonable to me.
Right. So this is something that I think is really interesting because there are a few issues with those that have low income today, right? And especially if you're with the unsheltered or homeless community, where you may not always have an ID available to you, right? So these are going to be ongoing issues somewhat, because when we start to talk about self-sovereign identity wallets and how they can take their ID with them with their phone, because many of them do have a phone so that they can get work and that kind of thing. But I think that presents an opportunity for them to carry their registration within their identity wallet. And then beyond that, tell me what you think on this, but I don't see a problem with somebody turning 18 and automatically receiving a registration to vote and not having to go through the effort of signing up. Like, that just seems kind of silly to me that you would have another bureaucratic process in between voting that says whether or not you can vote when you should just be able to do so.
Well, I don't think that would be that bad a thing, but I just feel like if you want to vote, and look, I'm 60, completely transparent. I didn't vote in every election that I was able to in my lifetime. I kind of got a little older, and then I started taking things more serious, and so I have voted consistently for a while now. But I take that as my patriotic duty and a right as a citizen. And I also take driving as a right. And they want me to go get a driver's license and pass a test. So I just don't think that it's that asking too much. If people want to vote, they'll find a way to be able to get registered. And even January, if they wanted to make mobile voter registration teams and have them go out into the community, I mean, the Fed's printing enough money, I think they could pay for it. It just all depends on if people feel like that the integrity of the elections is high enough on the pecking order that we're just going to make that happen. And I really wish that we could all feel better about the integrity of our elections.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. You kind of got my mind buzzing a little bit, which I always appreciate when somebody says something that makes me expand my thought process here. But there's a real cost to registering to vote, right? So beyond just saying, hey, go find a way, right? Great. Definitely agree with you on that. If you want to vote, you'll find a way to vote. A lot of these people, though, are apathetic about voting. Right. So it does have that barrier to entry, but there is a real operational cost to registering to vote. So if we just automatically registered everybody that was, a U.S. citizen that met the criteria to vote, I think that there's a use case for that. So we could be saving, millions of dollars on that end.
Yep, I think so too. Even if we, like I said, paid some teams to go out and do outreach to
Right.
Register some people. Okay, so that's voter blockchain ID. I think we covered that. So one of the things also, since we're a crypto-centric channel, what are your feelings about cryptocurrency and just all of that? There's enough there that I'm sure you can start
There's
out.
a lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm definitely crypto positive, right? I don't hold any ill intent towards the crypto community. From a personal standpoint, I'm crypto neutral, which I think is absolutely crucial if I'm to be elected, and especially if I'm going to be making laws in this space, right? I cannot be giving preferential treatment to anybody from that standpoint. And in terms of like what I think about it overall, I think is it 4% of the world is using crypto? Is that accurate?
Yes, the southern way of saying that is we're early, y'all.
Exactly. You're early. You're our early adopters. You're here first. And with that, I think that the majority of people on the outside, they look at crypto. One is it has a high barrier to entry, right? So it's expensive, right? And then they also look at it as places where people get scammed and they get their money taken, and rug pulls, right? So what's going to happen if I do something wrong? Does my money just disappear and I can no longer access it? And they're very weary of that, and they're weary of the bad actors, and they're weary of anything that anything that is tied to uses that could be nefarious, right? And by nefarious, I'll just be transparent. What I'm thinking of specifically is like child trafficking, right? So overall, the society is not positive around that. And so with this, if we can build a framework of trust around crypto that allows it to continue to grow and innovate and do all those amazing things that it's supposed to do, but also protect the people as we should, that'll be crucial. I know some individuals say, well, it's just education. And it's like, yeah, but I've seen very intelligent people easily lose like $1 million, and they're very smart. They know, they've been in this space, and when it happens, it hurts. And we can prevent that.
Well, I agree. And I also think that, and from my feel so far with speaking with you and getting to know you a little bit, January, I feel like that you're a personal responsibility person, and I am. And I ventured in, and I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I have not lost, knock on wood. The investments that I've made in crypto so far, I've not lost any money.
Good.
I've been up considerably more than I am at the moment, but I'm still net positive, and I've just been real careful. And part of that has to do with the fact that I'm 60, and there's some of the things that I have looked at where if it sounds too good to be true, at 30 I would have jumped all in. But now I'm a little bit older, maybe a little bit wiser, so
You have experience.
Yes, and I'm very picky about the crypto projects that I'm willing to put my hard-earned money into. And so I think if as more people learn that, and with any new thing, like I can remember when Bryant Gumbel and Katie Couric were talking about the internet, and I'm old enough to remember that. And so with any new technology, there's a learning curve, and the mass adoption is going to take time. The early adapters come in, then the middle of the road people, and then the latecomers. So yeah, we've got a lot to do. But one of the other things that I wanted to ask you though is what do you feel about, and again, since you're kind of in this industry, in techie industry in your career, what do you feel about the United States kind of sort of seeming to lag behind in the crypto adoption of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's just limited to crypto. I think it's technology in general. A lot of the technology that we see coming out of the United States is stuff that we've had for years. I was very frustrated to see a tweet from my opponent championing technology that I actually worked on personally, and like 5 years ago. Like, hey, I'm pushing this forward, and I'm like, not quite, but like, yeah, like I'm glad that you're on board with this now, right? It's about time. And so my general sentiment is, if the United States is to become the #1 country again, right? Because I think it would be, we're an amazing country, but we have some areas of opportunity. And if we don't address those areas of opportunity, we're going to slide down. And that's what we have to get out in front of. And so if we start to lean in technology, start to work smarter, start to embrace what our future can actually be and what it holds, then we are going to excel, and we will lead the world again. And that's within our future, and the world is waiting for us to step into that.
I believe that too. And, we dominated the .com boom, Google, Amazon, etc. And I just hate the fact that we seem like we're slowing down, because Singapore is not slowing down. England isn't slowing down.
They are not.
Japan is not slowing down. They're taking this blockchain thing and they're running with it, and they're getting everything set up. One of the things too that I wanted to find out from you is, I know that we've got, and we spoke about this before we started, we've got some bills that are being proposed now. So we are getting the legislation coming in a little bit at a time now, proposed legislation. And Senators Gillibrand and Loomis came up with the bill. The only problem with it is that it's heavily weighted towards Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I don't know about Senator Gillibrand, but Senator Loomis has publicly stated that she owns $100,000 worth of Bitcoin. And I just, I also mentioned to you before we started that my girlfriend has a phrase for this kind of thing. It's simply no bueno. And do you feel like that politicians ought to recuse themselves or divest their holdings if they're going to be working on monetary, financial, crypto legislation?
Yeah, I definitely think that in general, politicians should set aside their personal interests in favor of prioritizing the constituency base that they serve. So with that, in terms of the legislation seeming to have a lean, I would agree with that in particular. And I think that if they were to listen to this, that's the only thing I caution on, right? Is don't give preferential treatment when this technology is still, kind of in a foundling stage, right? Like, continue to foster innovation, just build a framework of trust around it. Overall, I think that the stuff that they put in that bill was positive towards the space, right? So even with that lean, I think that they put in the effort and they talked to the people that they needed to talk to make it have a positive impact. The only thing I would have changed, aside from the lean that we mentioned, is I would have liked to have seen more of that framework of trust put in place. Like, protect the people from the scammers before you look at saying who's really going to legislate this and who's going to make these people, who's going to make the legislation around the money that comes in.
Right. And January, I don't know how much you are familiar with the SEC versus Ripple law case.
Yeah.
But Gary Gensler, it started with Jay Clayton, and starting the lawsuit the day after, he resigned, and then went to work a month later at a fund called One River. And, if you're familiar enough with it, it really does seem, from the inside looking out at it, from my perspective, that they kind of set up Ethereum and Bitcoin to be able to go through and flourish. And if I remember correctly, when Bill Hinman gave the Ethereum free pass speech in 2018, Ethereum was $100. And then the high since then has been 4,000. And then it turns out that his law firm is a member of the Ethereum Foundation. And, it just
Wow.
doesn't pass the smell test. And the SEC doesn't, our community, I think I can speak for us, we don't feel like that the SEC and Gary Gensler are protecting the retail investor.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention all of this, because your community has certainly shown up within my comments frequently, right? So everybody from the XRP always comments when I talk about coming for people within the crypto community that are scamming individuals, and same within the government community that are scamming individuals. Transparently, I'm not an expert on that case, but it is something that as time goes on, I will continue to take a close look at it, because I think that it's a very large case at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, the bottom line, from what it appears, my opinion, not financial advice, but what it looks like, January, is that Gary Gensler wants to have dominion over the entire crypto industry in the United States. He thinks everything is a security, but he won't come out and tell the companies what the regulations are, what are the parameters. And it's kind of like you're getting a speeding ticket and the sheriff says, well, here's your speeding ticket. And you said, well, there were no speeding signs. Yes, thank you. Here's your ticket. And none of the companies that are trying to be startups in the crypto industry in the United States have got any clarity on being able to follow the rules, because the rules aren't clear. So,
right. And I think that that's a very good point that you make. And I hope that we can continue to bring that clarity, because I think that there are some, we'll call them perks, between the different cryptocurrencies that would help, that would actually separate them into whether or not they were a commodity or a security. But certainly, I think that it's important to clarify what is what, and how to fall into each category, and so that people can make purchasing decisions with the information that they need to.
well said. Very well said. So, from a political standpoint, also, again, I want to make sure that I'm giving you the chance to be able to kind of share your platform. So I'll hit on a couple of different topics there.
Sure.
Do you have any? What is your position on our border and immigration right now?
Yeah, what I see on the border is, I actually see too much bureaucracy around that. There's too many processes. It takes too long to get through it. You could spend years in the system, and I think that we all understand and agree that bringing top talent is good for the United States, right? But it's okay to say, hey, we would like this to happen in a rule-based fashion, and that's with. I want to also emphasize this, with care and humanity as well, right? And with that, the system that we have in place around immigration does not solve those problems, and so we need to create an operation that allows people to come in within a timely manner, even if it's filling out the paperwork in their home country or taking care of that, whatever it is, and making sure everything gets through. And then if there are crises that are impacting people's lives, and there's humanitarian efforts behind it, I think that we should address those as well. But really, it's when we identify inefficiencies in the system, just fixing them, right? No need to fight about it and use it as I'm going to call it political manipulation from either side. Like, that doesn't help anybody. That's just trying to win points for your team. Yeah.
Gotcha. And very well said. So, what about COVID policy? And that's another hot topic. So, I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to talk about the things that probably people really want to talk about, or hear about. But
that they want to hear about COVID.
How was your experience with COVID? How do you feel like our government responded to it? And how would you do it differently if you were in a position to make a difference?
Yeah, first of all, something very interesting that I think is important to mention about COVID, or at least my experience with it, and that is that I was in Asia when COVID first started. The last country that I had hit, so I went through like Japan, Malaysia, Thailand. I was going to hit Indonesia, but I was too tired by that time. But my last country out of there was Japan. And when I arrived, keep in mind, this is January, right? January 2020. When I arrived, they had signs everywhere telling you about COVID. They had a quarantine center. People were already wearing masks. it wasn't like people were just wearing it. And I asked about it. I'm like, hey, what's happening here? Because you're curious, and they're like, oh, we just do this because, like we don't want to get sick or whatever it is, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, so I just thought there was something to be aware of. And then I touched down in San Fran, and not a single thing was mentioned at all. There was no signs. I mean, I thought we would have seen something, and there wasn't anything back in January. And all these other countries, they were well aware of it before we were. So I did pull the numbers that came out of China around the R naught rate, and that's essentially like how it transfers and such. Because I love data, I'm very curious. Tell me more. What do you have? And just out of curiosity, I ran some numbers to see what would happen with those models here in the United States and what it would take to actually prevent essentially a spread throughout the country. And essentially what it was this: from your first case that you actually experienced in the US, you had to lock it down, right? That's not the best terminology here, but you could stop it at its source. And then whoever they came into contact with, you essentially have 10 weeks, right? And that was it. And then after that 10 weeks, cat's out of the bag. You can try and slow it down. You can try and protect your population, which I think is what people did. But ultimately, I don't think that the government really had the knowledge and the skill set in how to handle these kinds of problems, especially with all the information that was going around, right? And again, it doesn't matter like what side of the fence that you were on. I think that it's fair to say that it was like a spaghetti bowl of information that you had to try and follow through. So as far as me personally, I'm sure people will ask that. Me personally, I'm very germ aware. I don't like being sick, so I was more cautious, and I stayed away because that was me. But I think that was my choice. But if other people didn't want to wear a mask or wanted to go about their days, then I wasn't going to stop them, right? So I guess that's where that centrism in me comes out a little bit.
Right. And for those that don't know, the R naught rate that she was speaking of, that's how infectious.
Yes, thank you.
A disease is, how fast it replicates in the population. And I don't know, January. I guess there's one way of looking at it. I was very fortunate. I happened to get sick with the first strain, the Wuhan strain, some people call it, and didn't need to get hospitalized. And I'm 60 and a type 2 diabetic, so I'm in a high risk group.
Well, I'm so grateful that you made it through so that we could have this interview, Scott. That's great.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And so at that time, since I had caught it so early, January, I wasn't eligible for a vaccine yet. Okay. So I was really fortunate with some of the early investing that I did in crypto, and I didn't have to work for 18 months. And I'm incurably curious. And so I had a lot of time. And I love to look up stuff and to investigate stuff and do my own research. It's one of the reasons why I haven't lost anything in any of my crypto investments. But I decided to go headlong and go down the rabbit hole into the COVID stuff. And I am strongly do your own research, your body, your choice. Strongly. If people decide that they want to take the vaccine, take it. If you decide not to, it's your choice. And what I found for me was that I really liked natural immunity. And then I also got it again. I got Omicron. And the Omicron was like, I don't know, the Wuhan strain was maybe an 8. I had body aches and chills and fever and cough for a few days. That was it. And then the Omicron, I didn't even hardly know I had it. And I didn't even know I had either one until I went to go get a physical for my doctor, and he demanded that I get a test. And so I went ahead and got a test. I was
He gave
negative.
you a test.
He suggested that I go get a test. And then while I got my PCR test, I also got an antibody test. And that was when I confirmed that, hey, I've actually had this. So,
Interesting.
yeah. If I could encourage anyone to do anything, do your own research and make your decision for yourself, because there's a lot of information out there. And I'm actually thinking about going back to work again. And I talked to first time that this has happened. I talked to a company today, and they said that if you're not vaccinated, we're not going to hire you. And I asked the guy, haven't we got past that yet? But apparently at that company, they haven't. But
I think it's interesting based off of companies and things like this. And there might be some people that are like, oh no, she took the vaccine, but like I've definitely taken the vaccine. But for me, and keep in mind, I haven't had COVID yet either, right? So you've had that experience. I definitely have not. But for me, one of the COVID messed with food, right? Like, with your taste buds and everything. And for me, you just don't mess with food.
yeah. Well, and one last thing about that, and again,
Sure.
I know how strongly people feel about that stuff, and I appreciate you sharing how you feel about it. One thing that I would strongly encourage everyone to do: go out, and if you're a reader, go buy the book. If you're a listener, go buy the audiobook. But the best book that I've read through my COVID experience, and I've gotten about 900 hours worth of research in now. And again, I've got a little bit of OCD, so I can get a little bit obsessive about stuff when I get interested in it. But the best book that I read about anything COVID is called The Real Anthony Fauci by Robert Kennedy. That's a good book.
So how long does that read?
Well, the audiobook is 27 hours.
I mean, that's a long time. So I can get through about 512 hours, 500 pages.
That
So I can
that
read
would be, well, I'll put it this way: the first 4 chapters of that book, it gives you a really good idea about what Mr. Kennedy is sharing with everybody. And again, I just recommend that people read that because it's a really good read, very eye-opening. Okay, so
Thank you for the recommendation.
No more COVID. Okay. Next up, one of the biggest things that's happened recently, and again, I wouldn't be doing justice if I didn't ask you, because it's been one of the biggest things that's happened to us in the last 60 days, is what is your position about the Supreme Court's latest ruling on Roe versus Wade?
Yeah, I don't think anybody that is listening is going to be happy with my answer on this. So whether you're pro-life, pro-choice, I'm sorry, but for me, I look at the arguments and I think it's broken. It does not represent what the problem is. So in my mind, abortion is a symptom of the problem, right? And so focusing on it will not get us to a solution. We can see this because we've essentially had 60, 70 years of fighting over this symptom. And it doesn't get us anywhere ultimately. So I've put in a lot of thought and effort trying to find a solution in which we can get everybody to just kind of say, yeah, we can agree on this and how to move forward from it. And the way that you move forward is in focusing on the solution is saying, what is the lowest common denominator between the two groups? And then you go from there. And I know that there are going to be people that say that's not enough because it should be, winner takes all on either side, right? Or hey, it's 100% state right, or it's an individual right, or it's a government right. Take your choice, right? But the lowest common denominator is that it's like 94 or 95%, somewhere around there, of Americans agree that in instances of the mother's life, in instances of rape, incest, the health of the child, And then I'm just going to add bounty hunting onto here because I think that that one is silly for me personally. If you support that, I'm sorry. I can't wrap my head around it fully. But that is what we all pretty much agree on, right? That's a large majority there. So let's start there, and make sure that we don't have individuals that are going through their pregnancy where it turns out that they have something like an ectopic pregnancy. So these are all real pieces of legislation. So this isn't just me like willy-nilly throwing anything out. But if somebody is having an ectopic pregnancy, to not say, hey, you have to go through with this, where in 10% of the instances the mother loses her life, which is really high, right? Even if it happened to one person in the United States, it should never happen to anybody, right? So don't create scenarios in which people have to choose between life and 20 to 30 years in jail. That to me is that's not the American way. And so the American way is establishing the foundation. Once we have the lowest common denominator, moving up, having the discussions, and then figuring out what it is from there. So if in the future, you have an event like Roe v. Wade, and it doesn't remove all protections that should be in place, right? It just removes that highest layer.
Well, you didn't offend me because I was adopted. And for that reason,
because you were adopted?
I was adopted.
Okay.
So for that reason, I'm very pro-choice because anti-abortion, because if my 19-year-old biological mother had decided it was going to be too much of a hassle to be able to have me, right, instead of having the option to have me and put me up for adoption, I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking. And then on the other hand, I'm pro-choice because I love my girlfriend. I mean, I love that woman like nobody's business. And I'm telling you one thing right now, you're not going to catch me doing, and that's trying to tell her what to do with her body. I am not going to go there. That's again one of the.
You have your lean libertarian as well.
Correct. So that falls back into that no bueno category that she likes to talk about. I'm not telling her what she's going to do. It's her choice. So I would hope, as an adopted birth person, that there were not going to be, unless medical emergencies that were going to harm the mother, that there wouldn't be any abortions. So I'm pro-life in that. But then when I think about me deciding that I'm going to tell you what you're going to do with your body, it's just like the vaccines. I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's your body. It's your choice. So
you have consistency. That's what I'm hearing.
So therefore, your position didn't offend me one bit, and I appreciated it. All right,
yeah,
so
I appreciate that. Can I add one more thing to it?
Sure.
For those that still may be skeptical or frustrated with that answer, because I'm sure that it's there. If we continue to push winner takes all, there is a real humanity cost to this. Whether it's the woman, the child, there is a humanity cost, and we have to at least collaborate together to establish that baseline. Otherwise, there will be Americans that are put in harm's way. And that's what we have to be preventing as much as possible. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Very well stated. Okay, so just a couple more things. And then if you have anything else to say, then we'll keep talking. So what is your position and another one of the hot topics that we've got going on right now is gun control and what's going on with these mass shootings, which are just gut-wrenching.
Yeah, this is something that I quite honestly don't have a solution to. Not today, but maybe with some more thought and perseverance, I'll come up with something. But ultimately, Utah is a very pro-gun state overall, right? You have both Republicans and Democrats that own firearms. We have a lot of farmland in the district. And so for me to say to them, hey, like, you don't get any gun, like that's not going to work, because you're taking away their utility, right? And I was always taught growing up in a military family that guns are tools, not toys, right? So when I say utility, that's what I'm thinking of. Is I'm thinking like this is a a tool. And for me personally, I don't love that we wield any weapon on another human. I think that violence is a failure to communicate. So, well, not just communicate, but also to listen. So with that, like me personally, I don't have the same level of issue with guns that some people might have it within the inner cities. But I do think that like the NRA and the Republican Party, I thought what they used to have was fine in terms of gun legislation, and we've moved away from that. So if the data backs it up to say this is what we should be doing, then I think that we should at least at minimum have a conversation there. That's kind of my stance on that.
Well, my grandfather was the wisest man that I ever met. He was a senator in Georgia, and he taught me to guide my life by three things. One is if it's not true, don't say it. If it's not yours, don't take it. If it's not right, don't do it. And he was a avid hunter. And what I believe, based on what Daddy John taught me, is that we've got a people problem, not a gun problem. Because if we look at the percentage of people that are doing these things, it's a tiny, 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 tiny segment of the gun owner population. And I believe that we've got good gun laws. But one of the other things Daddy John taught me, January, was that a lock is not made for an honest man. And a gun law is not made for the bad guys. that guy that assassinated Abe in Japan, they don't have guns in Japan, but guess what that guy did? He made his own.
He made a gun, right? But there's so many layers to this, right? So and this is where we need to be prioritizing mental health and leaning in on that level and making sure that we're taking care of those things, and that's like it's a multifaceted problem. To say that there's one sweep all solution for anything would just be
disingenuous.
Yeah, it would be disingenuous.
I agree. All right. So another thing that I would like to be able to cover, again, and I'm just trying to give you the opportunity to give a broad spectrum of kind of what your platform is. Right. What is your opinion, and what would you do differently with our energy policy that the current administration has employed?
Yeah, I think in terms of energy, we have a lot of energy. We have a lot of wasted energy, right? So to look for the lowest way to capture energy and then store it for later use would be my personal preference. I know that there's a lot of people out there that look at gas policy and everything, and in terms of what we're experiencing today, I think it's a supply chain issue. And then of course, a failure to communicate. Like I assume that you're talking about gas prices, right? Like what would we do differently there? And I also think that we need to recognize and understand that there were refineries around the world that stopped producing petrol because they were in collaboration with the United States, and one country sided with one country and another sided with the other. And so because of that, they just shut down operations and they're not producing. So we really need to recognize that piece. And then I just realized we're at the top of the hour. I have I can do like one more question, and then we gotta.
That's good. We can wrap up here. And the one thing that in closing, that I would love to be able to pass along to you is to look into the SEC versus Ripple and something called ETHgate.
Yes, I
And
definitely have seen Heathgate get tagged in all across my Twitter.
yeah, and there is an attorney named John E. Deaton who is representing 68,000 retail investors, and he got amici approval through the court to represent us in the case.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be able to see and hear a true American hero, Mr. Deaton is right up at the top of my list, January, and he's doing everything that he's doing for our community pro bono. And so I was fortunate enough to be
That's
able to
nice of
meet him,
them.
and I was fortunate enough to meet him in Washington. And I would, he's got a great website if you wanted to educate yourself about it. Cryptolaw.us is a great website full of information. And then Robert Kennedy's The Real Anthony Fauci is a fantastic book. I highly recommend reading that.
Awesome. Yeah. So
Cool.
I made 2 notes from this call. So and then one of them was already on my list, of course. And I'm sure that I'll meet John at some point in the future. So
That sounds fantastic. Well,
yeah,
I won't take up any more of your time because I know you're on a tighter schedule than me. And I can't thank you enough, January. And you give me hope that the greatest country in America can return to our glory, because I really like where
perfect.
you're coming from. And I hope you win. I don't know if I'm doing an interview with somebody, am I supposed to say that?
I don't know. I certainly appreciate it, and it helps me know that the message is resonating and that people are hearing it, because I think that that's the scariest part of politics is you give up everything, you put everything on the line. So especially in my case, right? Because I'm coming into this so authentically, right? Like everything that you see is who I am. It's not, there's no pretense in front of it. And so
I would agree with, after having spoken with you, I would say that you're accurate with that assessment of yourself.
thank you. I
Good job.
appreciate that. So
Good job.
thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for all the different communities for listening and leaning in. Then of course, if you want to follow me, it's just Utah Politician on any of the social media platforms. I try and respond back as much as possible. But I encourage you strongly to somehow get involved in this election. Because at this point, everything that we're seeing, we're all in this together, and we can't be factionalized or tribalized anymore. Like, we have to come together if we're going to fix some of the problems in the United States. So thank you, XRP Army News, for having me, and I hope that you continue to find success.
I will, and I appreciate that. And I'll put your contact information. Do you want me to put your or Josh's email in the description of the video for people, or just your website?
The website's fine.
Okay.
So website is fine with @Utah Politician, and then yeah, I can send you a link. But
all right,
I do have to run. I'm 7 minutes late. They're going to be so.
Take care.
Okay.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.